And here it is, issue 303. Looks like it was the last week of term and it's the Christmas edition. So what have we got for the puzzle this week? It's a grid placement problem. What does it say then? Santa already has 6 square 1x1 structures on his North Pole property. So he plans to build 6 more rectangular 2x1 structures. These new structures will not be in neighbouring regions, even diagonally. And after expansion, exactly half of the regions in every row and column will contain a structure. Where will Santa be building? So what have we got? We've got this 6x6 grid. Some structures are in place, so they're fixed. Essentially, they're obstacles to future placements. When a structure is placed, a 2x2 structure, it forms an exclusion zone that new structures, not the original 1x1 structures, can't occupy. So if I were to put this one here, an exclusion zone would be set up around it like this. I needn't put one here because that's an obstacle. If I were to move that to there would now be an exclusion zone along each side and on the diagonal corners. So that's used up 9 of the free spaces around it. Plus the 2 it's occupying means that 11 spaces went with that particular placement. So I would guess in this problem it all lies down to where do you place the initial tile, the initial structure. Well, there may well be some algorithms for this, some of these chess programs and so on, about how to proceed with a problem like this. But in this case, it's only a 6x6 square. I think it very much depends on where you put the initial placement will determine quite rapidly either that that's the solution or that won't work. After I've made the initial placement, there's a fairly straightforward way of reasoning where the rest must go. But I've still got the problem of where's the initial placement, and the only thing I can think of, I want to put it down somewhere that would maximise the free space I've still got left to use. So I would think, put it on the edge, preferably at the corners. Where would all the corner placements be? That's 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6. There are 6 places I could start if I wanted to use a corner. Another thing I could think of, why not start with a corner where the exclusion zone covers some of the blocked squares anyway? In other words, which one maximises the space? So the obvious one to start with would be to put this here. Then I've only lost 2 spaces. Now, once that's in place, I'll start counting off what I've got. Each row or column has to have an occupancy of 3 as far as the structures are concerned. So there's 2 things that each row and column has got. It's got an amount of free space and it's got an available space. If I call the available space, just to borrow a term, the valency, and write that down, and I'll go through these columns. With that placement, I've got 3 already in place, which means the valency there is 0. This one here has got a valency, doesn't matter how much free space there is, of 2. In fact, all these columns have now got a valency of 2. Across the way, I'll put it over this side, that's got 1 occupied, so this row has a valency of 2. This one is complete. This one's got a valency of 2. This has got a valency of just 1. That's completely empty, so it's got a valency of 3, and that's got a valency of 2. Now that I've got these valencies, I can see that this row can't hold anymore, so those squares are excluded. This row's got a valency of 0, so it can't get any more in it. So those squares are excluded. Now I want to look for a row or a column where the valency is the same as, ideally, the free space, or pretty close to the free space. Well, this has got a valency of 2 and 3 free spaces, which means that 2 of them must be occupied. Well, there's only 3 ways in which that can happen. So now it's down to what were the ramifications of that move. Ramifications means from an initial decision, what are the various outcomes? And for each of these outcomes, What would happen after that? Are some of them a dead end? Or are there further branchings off from each of these, which may in the end lead to whatever? What are the ramifications here? Well, placing that there meant, doesn't matter what else you do, the immediate ramification is I have to use 2 out of these 3 spaces. So the 3 possibilities are I put one there, or down there, or in both those places, but you can't have that because they would exclude each other, which means there's only the 2 then in this case. I'll start with this one. What are the consequences of putting that there? Well, immediately the first thing I'll do is I'll put in its new exclusion zone. So there's the exclusion zone around it, and as soon as I do that, notice in this column here, as soon as I put in the exclusion zone for this tile, all the ones around it including the corners, this column has still got a valency of 2, but it's only got 1 available free space, so that was a dead end. So I try it here, put in its exclusion zone and redo my valencies. This is now complete, so that's down to a 0. I've got 2 in this row, so that's down to a 1. I've got 1 in this row, so it's down to a 2. Now, this row again has got a valency of 2. There's only 2 free spaces, so the only possible outcome from that would be to put 1 there and 1 there. Now let's re-establish the exclusion zones all around the perimeters of these new structures and count up what we've got, remembering that those are the only possible outcomes that came from that one there. And we have that this row is complete, this row is complete, that's fair enough. Across the way, still got room for 1 there, that's now complete, that's now complete, but looking at its column, has got a valency of 2 but only 1 free space. So that's it finished then. So clear away the spikes and it's back to the start. That seems so promising as well. I'll still stick with the corners, but this time, having been stung by looking at placing it next to an obstacle, I'll try this corner. Now there's 2 possibilities here. Place it here, which completes that row, uses up that, leaves me 3 spaces there, or put it here, which completes that column, and only leaves 2 spaces. Looks like good placement. So let's get the bits in. Let's get the exclusion zone in and work out the valencies. That's complete, so it's a 0. Still got room for 2, room for 2, room for 2, room for 2, room for 2. Across the way, I've got 2 already, only 1 left. I've got 1 in, 1 left. Yes, that should be a 2, sort it later. Only got room for 1. I've got room for 2, there's 2 already, got room for 1, and the top row is completely free, it's got a valency of 3. Now, with a valency of 0, those spaces are no longer available. Examine what we've got now. A valency of 2 with 2 free spaces means for that particular placement, I must use these 2. And with the orientation of these squares, because of that block, there's only 1 possibility. I put 1 there, and I put 1 there. That's the first ramification of this placement. Let's re-establish the exclusion zone. Now check my valencies. Well, that's complete, 3, that's complete, 3, that's complete, 1, room for 2, 1, room for 2, 1, room for 2. Across the way, 2, room for 1, 1, room for 2, 2, room for 1. That's complete, that's got room for 1, and that's got room for 1. So that's complete, so no space available there. This is complete, so no space available there. Now re-examine the valencies against free space. It should all begin to fall into place if it's going to work. Valency of 2, 2 free spaces, they must get occupied. For that initial placement, that must go there. Put in its exclusion zone all around it. Redo the valencies. That's now complete. That's still got room for 2, room for 2. That's now complete. That's now got room for 1. That's got room for 1. It's complete. Room for 1, room for 1. That's complete. So that's covered up. Re-examine the valencies. Oh, they're all falling into place. This column has got a valency of 2 and 2 free spaces, so that must go there. Exclusion zone. This column's got a valency of 2. There's 2 free spaces, that must go there. So there it is, all the valencies are down to 0. Every row and column's got the requisite 3 in it. and they're abiding by their mutual exclusions.